The stars stretched endlessly across the black canvas of space, their light dimmed by the swirling debris of an asteroid field. Captain Elias Voss sat in the cockpit of his ship, the Wandering Star, a small but reliable vessel that had carried him through countless missions for the Interstellar Mining Corporation. His job was simple: chart new territories, identify valuable resources, and avoid trouble. But today something felt different. Elias adjusted his seat, leaning forward as the ship's sensors flickered with activity. A faint energy signature pulsed on the monitor, barely noticeable amidst the static interference caused by the asteroids. He frowned, tilting his head slightly. "That's odd," he muttered to himself. Energy readings this far out were rare, especially in such a desolate region of space. Curiosity tugged at him like an invisible thread. With a sigh, Elias tapped a few commands into the console, steering the ship toward the source of the signal. The asteroid field grew denser as he navigated carefully, dodging jagged rocks and floating fragments of ancient comets. His hands moved instinctively over the controls, years of experience guiding him through the treacherous terrain. Finally, after what felt like hours, the source came into view. A derelict alien craft, its surface scarred and battered, drifting silently in the void. Elias hesitated, his fingers hovering over the communication panel. Protocol dictated he report any unusual findings to headquarters immediately, but something about the ship called to him, a whisper of mystery that refused to be ignored. After a moment of deliberation, he activated the docking mechanism. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding," he said aloud, more to break the silence than anything else. As the airlock hissed open, Elias stepped onto the alien vessel, his boots echoing softly against the cold metal floor. The interior was dimly lit, illuminated only by the occasional flicker of emergency lights embedded in the walls. Strange symbols adorned the corridors, glowing faintly in hues of blue and green. He couldn't read them, but they seemed almost alive, shifting subtly as if responding to his presence. Deeper inside, the ship showed signs of chaos. Panels hung loose from the ceiling, wires dangled like vines, and scorch marks marred the walls. It was clear the craft had been through some kind of catastrophic event. Elias moved cautiously, his pulse quickening with each step. Then, rounding a corner, he froze. There, slumped against a console, was a figure, a young girl no older than 12 or 13. Her skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the ambient light in iridescent patterns. Long silvery hair cascaded down her back, partially covering her face. She wore a torn robe-like garment, its edges frayed and singed. Most striking, however, were the intricate markings etched into her skin, glowing softly in rhythmic pulses. Elias knelt beside her, checking for signs of life. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and her skin radiated warmth despite the freezing temperatures aboard the derelict ship. Gently, he brushed a strand of hair away from her face, revealing delicate features that seemed both familiar and alien. "Who are you?" he whispered, though he knew she wouldn't answer. He debated leaving her behind. Taking her with him would violate every rule in the book, potentially costing him his career, or worse. Yet looking at her fragile form, he couldn't bring himself to abandon her. Something deep within told him she was important, though he couldn't explain why. Carefully, Elias lifted her into his arms, surprised by how light she felt. He carried her back to the Wandering Star, securing her in the medical bay. As he tended to her injuries, patching up cuts and treating burns, strange visions began to invade his mind. Flashes of fire, crumbling cities, and shadowy figures chasing someone through endless corridors filled his thoughts. Each image left him disoriented, as if pieces of someone else's memories were forcing their way into his consciousness. When the vision subsided, Elias found himself staring at the girl now resting peacefully under a blanket. Whatever connection he had formed with her during those moments unsettled him. Who was she? And why did saving her feel like so much more than just an act of kindness? Days passed aboard the Wandering Star, as Captain Elias Voss watched over the mysterious alien girl. She lay unconscious in the medical bay, her faint bioluminescent patterns pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. The ship's sensors had detected no signs of illness or injury beyond superficial wounds, yet she remained unresponsive, lost in some deep slumber. Elias spent hours sitting by her side, studying her features and wondering about the strange visions that lingered in his mind after their first encounter. He tried speaking to her occasionally, hoping his voice might stir her awake. "Hey there," he said one evening, leaning against the edge of the bed. "Still not ready to join the land of the living, huh?" His words echoed softly in the quiet room, met only by the hum of the ship's systems. Despite her silence, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that she understood him on some level. It was as if her presence alone carried an energy that resonated with everything around her. On the third day, just as Elias began to doubt whether she'd ever wake up, her eyes fluttered open. They were unlike anything he'd seen before. Large, luminous orbs that shifted through shades of violet and gold. For a moment, they locked onto his face, filled with confusion and curiosity. Then, without warning, she bolted upright, clutching at the blanket around her shoulders. "Whoa, easy," Elias exclaimed, raising his hands to calm her. "You're safe here." She stared at him, her expression unreadable. Her lips parted, as if to speak, but instead, she emitted a series of melodic hums and clicks. The sounds flowed together in a way that felt almost musical, though Elias couldn't decipher their meaning. Frowning, he pointed to himself. "Elias," he said slowly. "My name is Elias." Her head tilted slightly, mimicking the gesture like a curious animal. After a pause, she raised a hand to her chest and made another sound, a soft, lilting note that seemed to shimmer in the air. Though he didn't understand it, Elias nodded. "Okay, I'll take that as your name for now." Over the next few days, communication between them remained limited but gradually improved. Elias introduced her to basic objects aboard the ship, repeating their names in common tongue while pointing them out. To his surprise, she caught on quickly, mimicking his pronunciation with surprising accuracy. Her intelligence was undeniable, even if her grasp of language was still rudimentary. But it wasn't until the 5th day that real progress occurred. As they sat together in the common area, Elias attempting to teach her the word for star, she suddenly reached out and touched his temple. A jolt of warmth spread through his body, followed by a flood of images and sensations not his own but hers. He saw flashes of towering, crystalline cities bathed in golden light, heard the harmonious chants of crowds gathered under vast skies, and felt the terror of fleeing as fire consumed everything. When the vision ended, Elias gasped, pulling back instinctively. The girl looked at him with wide eyes, her markings glowing brighter than ever. "What? What was that?" he stammered, rubbing his temples. She hesitated before placing both hands over her heart, then gesturing outward toward the stars visible through the viewport. Her message was clear, even without words. These memories belonged to her people, and she wanted him to understand. That night, Elias replayed the visions in his mind, piecing together fragments of what he'd seen. The girl, whose name he now suspected might be Calith, based on the syllables she repeated most often, wasn't just a survivor of some random catastrophe. She came from a civilization far more advanced than humanity's, one capable of feats Elias could scarcely imagine. But something had destroyed them, leaving behind only ruins and refugees scattered across the galaxy. As dawn approached, marked by the artificial lighting cycle aboard the ship, Elias decided to press further. Using gestures and simple phrases, he asked Calith why she had been on the derelict vessel. At first, she seemed reluctant to respond, her glowing markings dimming as if shielding herself from painful memories. Finally, she closed her eyes and placed a hand on his arm, initiating another telepathic exchange. This time, the images were darker. He saw shadowy figures clad in black armor, their faces obscured by masks. They moved with purpose, hunting relentlessly through corridors lined with intricate carvings. Explosions rocked the background, sending debris flying as terrified beings fled in all directions. Amid the chaos, Calith, or rather her younger self, ran alongside others, clutching a small orb-like object that pulsed with the same bioluminescent energy as her skin. Suddenly, the connection broke, leaving Elias breathless. Kalith pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to shield against unseen threats. Whatever she carried within her, the orb, her glowing markings, perhaps even her very essence, it was significant enough to warrant pursuit by those shadowy figures. Before he could ask more questions, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and the computerized voice announced, "Unauthorized vessels approaching, prepare for potential engagement." Elias rushed to the cockpit, heart pounding. On the radar screen, 3 sleek ships appeared, closing in fast. Their design was unfamiliar, but their intent was clear. They were here for Kalith. Panic surged within him, but he forced himself to focus. Grabbing a handheld communicator, he called back to the medical bay. "Kalith, stay where you are. I'm coming to get you." By the time he reached her, the bounty hunters had already begun hailing his ship. Their leader's gruff voice crackled over the comms. "Hand over the artifact, human, and we'll let you live." Elias clenched his fists, glancing at Kalith. Her markings flared brightly, illuminating the room with an otherworldly glow. Whatever she was, whoever she represented, she wasn't just a refugee. She was a key to something far greater. And protecting her meant stepping into a conflict that spanned galaxies. Taking a deep breath, Elias activated the ship's engines. "Hold on tight," he told her, gripping the controls. "We're getting out of here." As the wandering star shot forward, dodging blasts from the pursuing ships, Elias realized his life would never be the same. Saving Kalith hadn't been an act of mere compassion. It was the beginning of a journey neither of them could have anticipated. The chase through the void of space was relentless. Captain Elias Voss maneuvered the wandering star with every ounce of skill he possessed, weaving between asteroid clusters and firing evasive bursts from the ship's thrusters. Behind them, the 3 bounty hunter vessels pursued with mechanical precision, their weapons lighting up the darkness with streaks of energy. Kalith clung to the back of his seat in the cockpit, her glowing markings pulsing erratically as if mirroring the tension aboard the ship. Elias gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. "We can't keep this up forever," he muttered, under his breath. The smaller, more agile bounty ships were gaining ground, and it wouldn't take long before they overwhelmed him. He glanced over his shoulder at Kalith, whose wide eyes reflected both fear and determination. Whatever she carried within her, the artifact, her bioluminescent power, it made her a target, but also something far greater than Elias had initially understood. With no other options, Elias activated the ship's emergency jump drive, a risky move that could either save them or leave them stranded in uncharted territory. The engines groaned in protest as the stars outside stretched into streaks of light, and then everything went black. When the ship re-emerged, it drifted silently in an unfamiliar star system. The bounty hunters were nowhere to be seen. Whether they'd lost track or couldn't follow remained unclear. For now they were safe, or so Elias hoped. After stabilizing the ship, Elias set a course for a nearby planet identified by the navigation system as Solon's Reach, a remote outpost, known for its eccentric inhabitants and thriving black market. It wasn't ideal, but Elias needed answers, supplies, and perhaps allies who could help him protect Kalith. As they approached the planet's surface, jagged cliffs and sprawling ruins came into view, remnants of ancient civilizations now repurposed into makeshift settlements. Upon landing, Elias stepped out cautiously, scanning the area. The air smelled faintly metallic, and the distant hum of machinery echoed through the canyon-like streets. Kalith followed closely behind, her markings dimmed, but still visible. People turned to stare as they passed. Humans, aliens, and beings Elias couldn't identify, all drawn to the unusual sight of the glowing girl. Their search led them to a dilapidated building marked with faded symbols that vaguely resembled the ones on Kalith's skin. Inside, they found Dr. Naira Solon, a rogue archaeologist rumored to specialize in forgotten cultures. She sat hunched over a cluttered desk, surrounded by holographic projections of alien artifacts and crumbling manuscripts. Her sharp green eyes, flicked upward as Elias entered, narrowing slightly when she noticed Kalith. Well, well, Naira said, leaning back in her chair. What do we have here? A human dragging an endangered species across the galaxy? Elias ignored her sarcasm, stepping forward. I need your expertise. Do you know anything about her? He gestured toward Kalith, whose markings brightened slightly at the mention of herself. Naira studied the girl intently, rising from her seat to circle around her. She reached out, hesitating before lightly brushing a finger against one of Kalith's glowing patterns. Instantly, images flooded Naira's mind, visions of crystalline cities, harmonic chants, and fiery destruction. She gasped, stumbling backward. Impossible. What is? Elias demanded, stepping between them. Naira steadied herself, her expression shifting from disbelief to awe. She's Jirathi, she whispered. One of the last of her kind. Elias frowned. Jirathi? I've never heard of them. That's because most people think they're extinct, Naira explained, pacing the room. They were an ancient civilization, masters of technology powered by harmonic resonance, a force derived from unity among their people. Their society was built on balance and cooperation, until internal strife tore them apart centuries ago. Only legends remain now? Kalith listened intently, her markings flaring brighter as Naira spoke. When the archaeologist paused, Kalith raised a hand to her chest and hummed softly, gesturing toward the sky. Naira nodded slowly. Yes, child, you carry their legacy. Elias crossed his arms. Legacy? What does that mean exactly? Naira sighed, pulling up a hologram of a map dotted with glowing points. According to myth, the Jirathi left behind 3 sacred relics hidden across the galaxy. These relics are keys to unlocking the full potential of the harmonic conduit, a title given to the chosen leader, destined to reunite their fractured race. If what I'm seeing is true, she pointed to Kalith. She's the conduit. A heavy silence fell over the room. Elias stared at Kalith, realization dawning. Everything. The visions, the glowing marks, the shadowy figures hunting her, it all made sense now. She wasn't just a refugee, she was royalty, burdened with the weight of restoring her people. But why would someone want to stop her? Elias asked. If she's supposed to unite her race, wouldn't others support her? Naira shook her head grimly. Not everyone wants the Jirathi to rise again. Some fear their power. Others see their technology as a threat. And those relics? They're not just symbols, they hold immense energy. In the wrong hands, they could destroy entire star systems. Elias felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. Protecting Kalith meant more than keeping her alive. It meant safeguarding the future of an entire species. But how could he, a lone pilot with no ties to galactic politics, possibly succeed? As if sensing his doubt, Kalith placed a hand on his arm. Her touch was warm, reassuring, and filled with quiet resolve. Through their brief connection, Elias felt a surge of gratitude and trust. She believed in him, even if he struggled to believe in himself. All right, Elias said finally, turning to Naira. Where do we start looking for these relics? Naira hesitated, glancing between Elias and Kalith. You're serious about this? It's dangerous work. You'll face enemies far worse than those bounty hunters. I don't have much of a choice, Elias replied firmly. If Kalith is destined to lead her people, then I'll do whatever it takes to help her. Naira studied him for a moment, then nodded. The first relic is said to be hidden beneath the molten surface of Pyros Prime, a planet ruled by volcanic eruptions and automated defenses. Getting there won't be easy, but it's your best shot. With directions downloaded onto a datapad and fresh supplies loaded onto the ship, Elias and Kalith prepared to depart. Before leaving, Naira handed Elias a small device. This will help you detect harmonic frequencies. Use it wisely. As they climbed back aboard the wandering star, Elias glanced at Kalith, who stood quietly by the viewport, gazing at the stars. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but for the first time in years he felt a sense of purpose. Saving her life had been the beginning of something extraordinary, and he was determined to see it through. Little did they know, their journey to Pyros Prime would test their courage and their bond in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The journey to Pyros Prime was anything but smooth. As the wandering star approached the fiery planet, its surface glowed ominously beneath layers of swirling ash clouds. Rivers of molten lava carved jagged paths through the terrain, and plumes of smoke rose like dark pillars into the sky. It was a world that seemed alive with rage, every inch of it hostile and unwelcoming. Elias Voss adjusted his course carefully, navigating through turbulent atmospheric currents that threatened to destabilize the ship. Beside him, Kalith sat silently in the co-pilot's seat, her glowing markings dimmed as if she were conserving her energy. She hadn't spoken much since leaving Solon's reach, but Elias could sense her apprehension. The weight of their mission hung heavily over them both. "Ready for this?" Elias asked, glancing at her. His voice carried a mix of determination and unease. Kalith turned to look at him, her luminous eyes meeting his. Without words, she placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of trust and reassurance. Though she couldn't articulate it, Elias understood what she meant. They would face this trial together. Once they landed on the outskirts of an active volcanic zone, the trio, Elias, Kalith, and Dr. Nira Solon, prepared to venture into the Inferno. Nira had insisted on joining them after learning about the relic's location, claiming her knowledge of ancient Zirathi technology might prove invaluable. While Elias appreciated her expertise, he couldn't shake the feeling that bringing her along added another layer of risk. Equipped with heat-resistant suits and breathing apparatuses, they stepped out onto the scorching surface. The ground beneath, their feet radiated intense heat, forcing them to tread lightly to avoid damaging their gear. Abby. Over them, the sky churned with toxic fumes while distant eruptions sent shockwaves rippling through the air. "This way," Nira said, consulting the harmonic frequency detector she'd given Elias earlier. The device emitted a faint hum, growing louder as they moved closer to their destination. "The signal is strong here, we're close." Their path led them toward a massive fissure in the earth, where rivers of lava flowed steadily downward into a cavernous abyss. Steam hissed violently as droplets of water from their suits hit the molten rock. Inside the fissure, they discovered a narrow tunnel leading deeper underground. The walls shimmered with veins of crystalline minerals, casting eerie reflections in the dim light of their headlamps. As they descended, the temperature rose even higher, testing the limits of their protective gear. Kalith walked with purpose, her glowing patterns flickering as if responding to the environment around her. At times, she paused to touch the crystal-encrusted walls, closing her eyes as if listening to something only she could hear. "It's like she knows where we're going," Elias remarked quietly to Nira. "She probably does," Nira replied. "Her connection to the relics is innate. They're calling to her." Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a vast chamber filled with towering stalagmites and stalactites made entirely of hardened magma. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested the first relic, a small orb encased in a lattice of golden filaments. Its surface pulsed with a soft rhythmic glow, resonating with Kalith's own bioluminescence. Before they could reach it, however, the ground trembled violently. From the shadows emerged mechanized drones, their metallic bodies gleaming menacingly in the low light. Each drone bore the same symbol etched into its chassis, a black sun surrounded by jagged lines. These weren't natural defenders. They were remnants of the Zirathi's automated systems, programmed to protect the relic at all costs. "Stay behind me," Elias shouted, drawing a plasma pistol from his belt. He fired several shots at the nearest drone, disabling one of its limbs, but for every shot he took, 2 more drones advanced, their weapons charging with deadly intent. Nira scrambled to activate a portable EMP device, hoping to disable the machines temporarily. Meanwhile, Kalith stood frozen in place, her markings flaring brightly as the relic called to her. Her hands trembled, and tears streamed down her face, not from fear, but from the overwhelming pressure of the moment. You can do this, Calith, Elias yelled, dodging blasts of energy as he fought to hold off the drones. Trust yourself. Summoning every ounce of courage, Calith stepped forward, ignoring the chaos erupting around her. She raised her hands, palm outward, and let out a melodic hum that echoed throughout the chamber. The sound resonated with the relic, causing it to emit a blinding burst of light. The drones froze mid-motion, their systems overloaded by the harmonic pulse. Seizing the opportunity, Calith ran to the pedestal and grasped the orb. The moment her fingers touched it, the lattice dissolved, merging with her glowing markings. A surge of energy coursed through her body, sending waves of light cascading across the chamber. The remaining drones collapsed lifelessly to the ground, their threat neutralized. Breathing heavily, Elias and Naira approached her. Calith clutched the orb to her chest, her entire being radiating a newfound strength. For the first time, she spoke aloud in halting common tongue. I'm ready. Naira stared at her in awe. She's tapping into her power. This is just the beginning. Though exhausted, Elias felt a flicker of hope. They had retrieved the first relic, but the trials ahead would be far greater. Still, seeing Calith stand tall and resolute gave him confidence. Together they were capable of achieving the impossible, even if it meant braving fire, fury, and forces beyond their comprehension. The journey to Aquilus IV, where the second relic lay submerged in its toxic ocean, was fraught with tension. The trio aboard the Wandering Star, Elias, Calith, and Dr. Naira Solon, had grown closer during their time together, united by their shared mission. Yet beneath the surface of camaraderie, cracks began to form. Calith had changed since retrieving the first relic on Pyros Prime. Her glowing markings now pulsed with a steady brilliance, and her presence seemed to command attention without effort. She spoke more often in broken common tongue, her confidence growing alongside her connection to the harmonic conduit within her. But this newfound strength came at a cost. Moments of vulnerability revealed the weight she carried as the last hope for her people. Elias noticed how she would retreat into silence, staring out at the stars with an expression that mirrored both resolve and sorrow. Naira, on the other hand, grew increasingly restless. Her initial enthusiasm for aiding Calith had begun to wane, replaced by guilt and doubt. Nights spent poring over ancient texts about the Jirathi left her haunted by memories of past failures. Years ago, she had uncovered evidence of the Jirathi's existence but dismissed it as myth, choosing instead to focus on safer pursuits. Now faced with the reality of Calith's destiny, Naira couldn't shake the feeling that she was compounding old mistakes by involving herself in something far beyond her control. Elias tried to bridge the widening gap between them, offering reassurance when tensions flared. "We're doing the right thing," he told Naira one evening as they prepared for arrival at Aquilus IV. "She needs us." Naira sighed, rubbing her temples. "And what happens if we fail? Or worse, what if we succeed? Do you really think humanity is ready for a resurgence of the Jirathi? Their power could destabilize entire systems." "It's not our place to decide," Elias replied firmly. "All we can do is help her fulfill her purpose." But even as he spoke, Elias wondered whether Naira's concerns held merit. He'd seen glimpses of Calith's potential, the way she commanded energy, the visions that connected her to her people's history, and while awe-inspiring, they were also intimidating. What kind of leader would she become? Would she bring unity or destruction? When they reached Aquilus IV, the planet's atmosphere loomed ominously above them. Its oceans stretched endlessly, shimmering under perpetual storms of acid rain. Toxic fumes choked the air, making survival outside specialized suits impossible. As they descended toward the coordinates provided by Naira's research, the ship's sensors detected movement beneath the waves, mechanized drones similar to those encountered on Pyros Prime. "This doesn't look good," Elias muttered, scanning the readouts. "Whatever's down there knows we're coming." "Then we'll have to be careful," Naira said tersely, adjusting her breathing apparatus. "Let's just get the relic and leave." Their descent into the ocean was harrowing. Encased in Pressurized diving suits, the trio navigated through murky waters teeming with bioluminescent creatures that darted away at their approach. The deeper they went, the darker and colder it became, until finally they reached the seabed. There, embedded in the silt, stood a massive structure resembling a temple, its entrance guarded by statues of towering beings with elongated limbs and serene faces. As they approached, Kalith hesitated, her markings flickering faintly. "What is wrong?" Elias asked, noticing her unease. She shook her head, murmuring softly in her native tongue before translating haltingly. "Something watches us." Before anyone could respond, mechanical arms erupted from the silt, dragging them toward the temple doors. Inside, the chamber glowed with an eerie blue light emanating from crystalline walls. At the center rested the second relic, a jagged shard suspended mid-air, crackling with electric energy. Suddenly, alarms blared, and the ground trembled as automated defenses activated. Drones swarmed around them, weapons charging. Elias fired, his plasma pistol, taking down several machines, but reinforcements kept coming. Meanwhile, Naira worked frantically to disable the security systems using her portable EMP device. In the chaos, Kalith moved instinctively toward the relic. Her markings flared brightly, emitting a harmonic resonance that disrupted the drone's programming. One by one, they froze, collapsing into lifeless heaps. Seizing the moment, Kalith reached out and grasped the shard. It fused instantly with her skin, embedding itself near her collarbone like a fragment of starlight. Elias clenched his fists, stepping protectively in front of Kalith. "Over my dead body." Naira, overcome with guilt, pushed past him. "Take me instead," she pleaded, addressing the leader. "I betrayed them. I'm the one you want." One who had once been an ally gnawed at him relentlessly. Beside him, Kalith rested quietly, her glowing markings dimmed to a soft shimmer. "State your purpose," it intoned, its voice mechanical yet oddly melodic. Kalith hesitated, then placed a hand over her heart. "I am Kalith, daughter of the Zirathi. I seek the final relic to unite my people." The construct paused, analyzing her words. Then, without warning, it raised its arm, projecting a beam of light that enveloped her. Images flooded Elias's mind as well. Visions of fire and ice, destruction and rebirth. He realized the construct wasn't just testing her physical abilities. It was probing her soul, forcing her to confront her deepest fears and doubts. Kalith staggered under the weight of the visions. She saw herself failing, her people abandoning her, the galaxy consumed by chaos because of her inability to lead. Tears streamed down her face, freezing instantly against her cheeks. But through the turmoil, something shifted. Her glowing patterns surged, filling the cavern, and with radiant light. With a cry that echoed like a song, she pushed back against the illusion, breaking free from its grip. "You underestimate me," she declared, her voice steady despite the tremors in her body. "I will not fail." The construct lowered its arm, its eye dimming slightly. "Trial 1 complete," it announced. "Proceed." The next challenge came in the form of holographic projections, shadowy figures wielding weapons charging at Kalith with lethal intent. This time, Elias joined the fray, firing his plasma pistol to disable the illusions while Kalith unleashed bursts of harmonic energy from her palms. Together, they fought side by side, their movements synchronized as if guided by an unseen force. Finally, the last trial presented itself, a massive wall of ice blocking their path to the relic. Etched into the surface were intricate carvings, depicting scenes of Zirathi history, their rise, their fall, and their hope for renewal. The construct instructed Kalith to channel her power into the carvings, using the energy of the relics already bonded with her to unlock the final artifact. Placing her hands on the ice, Kalith closed her eyes, focusing all her strength. Her markings flared brilliantly, sending waves of light cascading across the chamber. The ice began to crack, splitting apart to reveal the relic, a staff capped with a glowing crystal that pulsed in harmony with her heartbeat. As she grasped it, the staff merged seamlessly with her essence, completing the transformation. Elias watched in awe as Kalith stood tall, her entire being radiating power and purpose. She was no longer just a girl burdened by destiny. She was the harmonic conduit, the leader destined to reunite her fractured people and reshape the galaxy. But their victory was short-lived. Behind them, the construct reactivated, its core glowing ominously. "Warning," it droned. "External forces detected." A squadron of ships descended upon the glacier, their engines roaring through the storm. Shadowy figures clad in black, armor poured into the cavern, led by the same commander who had pursued them on Aquilus IV. "You've come far, human," he sneered, addressing Elias. "But your journey ends here." Elias clenched his fists, stepping protectively in front of Kalith. "Not today," he growled. Kalith raised her hand, her staff glowing fiercely. "No more running," she said, her voice commanding. "Today we fight, for my people, for our future." With that, the battle began. Elias fired shot after shot, taking down enemies with precision while Kalith wielded her newfound powers, creating barriers of light and unleashing waves of energy that sent foes sprawling. Despite being outnumbered, they fought with unparalleled synergy, driven by a shared determination to see this mission through. When the dust settled, the cavern was littered with fallen adversaries. The commander lay defeated, his helmet cracked to reveal a face twisted with rage and disbelief. As he took his last breath, he whispered, "You cannot stop what is coming." Ignoring his cryptic warning, Elias turned to Kalith, who stood amidst the wreckage, her staff glowing softly. "It's done," she said, her voice filled with quiet triumph. "We've found them all." Exhausted but victorious, they returned to the wandering star, leaving the frozen wasteland behind. With all 3 relics secured, Kalith was ready to embrace her role as queen. But as Elias gazed at her, he knew their journey was far from over. The galaxy awaited her leadership, and the challenges ahead would test everything they had fought for. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, its stars twinkling like promises yet to be fulfilled. Inside the wandering star, Kalith stood at the viewport, her glowing markings pulsing softly as she gazed out at the cosmos. She clutched her staff close, its crystal core resonating with a steady hum that seemed to echo her heartbeat. The weight of what she carried, the relics, her people's legacy, and the hope for their future, was no longer a burden, but a purpose. Elias watched her from the cockpit doorway, leaning against the frame with arms crossed. For months, they had fought side by side, facing trials that tested their courage, trust, and resolve. Now, as they prepared to part ways, he couldn't help but feel a pang of loss. Saving Kalith's life had been the beginning of something extraordinary, a journey that had changed him in ways he never expected. "You're sure about this?" Elias asked finally, breaking the silence. "Once you broadcast your message, there's no turning back." Kalith turned to face him, her luminous eyes reflecting both gratitude and determination. "I am ready," she said firmly, her voice clearer than ever before. "My people need me. They have waited long enough." Elias nodded, though his expression remained somber. "Just promise me one thing. Don't forget who helped you get here." A faint smile touched her lips. "How could I forget? You saved my life when no one else would." With that, Kalith activated the ship's communication array, sending out a harmonic signal across the galaxy. It was a call not just to surviving Zirathi refugees, but to all beings who believed in unity and renewal. The message carried her essence, her power, her vision, and her unwavering commitment to rebuilding her fractured civilization. Days passed as responses trickled in. At first, it was cautious whispers, encrypted messages from hidden colonies, and isolated ships. Then came delegations of Zirathi survivors, emerging from the shadows where they had lived in fear for generations. They arrived aboard vessels old and new. Their appearances varied, but their glowing markings unmistakable proof of their shared heritage. When the first group boarded the wandering star, Elias stepped aside, allowing Kalith to greet them alone. He watched from a distance as she embraced them, tears streaming down her face as they exchanged stories of loss and resilience. Her markings flared brightly, harmonizing with theirs in a display of unity that left even Elias awestruck. As more survivors gathered, Kalith led them to a neutral planet chosen as the site of their rebirth, a lush world untouched by war or greed. There, under skies painted with twin suns, they began constructing a new home. Crystalline structures rose from the ground, powered by the same harmonic resonance that coursed through Kalith's veins. The air buzzed with energy, not just from machines, but from the collective spirit of a people coming together after centuries of separation. Elias stayed on the sidelines during these early days, observing quietly as Kalith took her place as leader. She moved among her people with grace and authority, guiding them with wisdom beyond her years. Yet even as she grew into her role, she never forgot the human who had risked everything to protect her. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the landscape in hues of orange and purple, Elias approached Kalith where she stood overseeing the construction. "You've done it," he said, his tone filled with quiet admiration. "Your people are united again." Kalith turned to him, her expression softening. "Because of you, without your help, none of this would have been possible." Elias shook his head. "This isn't my fight anymore. You don't need me now." Her hand reached out, gripping his arm gently. "But I want you to stay, as an ally, as a friend. Your place is here if you choose it." For a moment, Elias considered her offer. The idea of staying, to witness the rise of a new civilization, to continue fighting alongside Kalith, was tempting. But deep down, he knew his path lay elsewhere. He was a wanderer at heart, someone who thrived on solitude and exploration. Staying would mean giving up a part of himself he wasn't ready to let go. "I can't," he admitted, meeting her gaze. "But I'll always be watching, from afar, if nothing else." Kalith nodded, understanding without needing words. She reached into a pouch at her side, pulling out a small crystal imbued with harmonic energy. Its surface shimmered faintly, catching the light of the setting suns. "Take this," she said, placing it in his palm. "So you'll remember us, and what we've built together." Elias closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I won't forget." The next morning, Elias climbed aboard the wandering star for the last time. As the engines roared to life, Kalith stood outside, surrounded by her people. She raised her staff high, its glow illuminating the sky as a final farewell. Elias saluted her through the viewport, then set a course for the stars. As the ship disappeared into the void, Kalith lowered her staff, her heart swelling with pride and purpose. Though Elias was gone, his influence lingered, not just in the crystal he carried, but in the lessons he had taught her about courage, sacrifice, and the power of trust. With each passing day, her people grew stronger, their unity fueled by the hope she had reignited. Under Kalith's leadership, the Jarathi began forging alliances with other species, blending ancient traditions with modern innovations. Their society became a beacon of harmony and progress, inspiring others to follow their example. And though challenges remained, Kalith faced them with the same determination that had brought her this far. Meanwhile, Elias drifted through the galaxy, forever changed by the journey he had undertaken. The crystal Kalith had given him rested on the dashboard of his ship, a reminder of the bond they shared and the brighter future they had created together. Though his adventures continued, he often found himself gazing at the stars, wondering how far Kalith's influence had spread.